Your fingers hover over the keyboard. The cursor blinks. You are exactly one email away from submitting the proposal that could change your entire career. Your chest tightens. Suddenly, a strange and overwhelming urge washes over you to clean your entire kitchen. You stand up, leave the laptop behind, and spend the next 2 hours scrubbing countertops. Why now? Why, when you are so close to what you want, does your mind pull the emergency brake? This is not laziness. This is not a lack of willpower. It is your brain's survival mechanism operating exactly as it was designed to. You are experiencing the psychological phenomenon of self-sabotage, a silent defense mechanism that triggers right when success is within your grasp. It seems entirely irrational. Why would your own mind actively work against your desires? The truth is, your brain does not care about your success. It cares about your safety. To your primitive nervous system, the familiar is safe, even if it is miserable, and the unfamiliar is dangerous, even if it is wonderful. To understand why your brain does this, you must first understand a concept known as self-handicapping. In 1978, psychologists Edward Jones and Stephen Berglas conducted a groundbreaking study that revealed how far the human mind will go to protect its own ego. They presented participants with a highly challenging cognitive test. Half of the participants were given solvable problems, while the other half were given unsolvable ones. Regardless of their actual performance, all participants were told they scored exceptionally well. Before the second round of testing began, the researchers offered the participants a choice between 2 drugs. One drug was described as a performance enhancer that would boost their mental clarity. The other drug was described as a disruptor that would impair their cognitive abilities. The participants who had been given the unsolvable problems, and who secretly believed their high scores were a complete fluke, overwhelmingly chose the impairing drug. This decision seems completely backward. Why would anyone choose to handicap themselves right before a performance? The researchers realized that these participants were terrified of exposing their perceived inadequacy. By taking the impairing drug, they created a flawless psychological shield. If they failed the second test, they could blame the drug, not their own intelligence. If they somehow succeeded despite the drug, they would look like geniuses who overcame the odds. This is the exact mechanism your brain uses when you procrastinate, pick a fight, or miss a deadline right before a major breakthrough. Your brain would rather fail on its own terms with a ready-made excuse than try its hardest and risk discovering that its best is not good enough. But self-sabotage runs deeper than just protecting your ego. It is also a desperate bid for psychological consistency. In 1983, psychologist William Swan introduced self-verification theory, which asserts that human beings have an intense, almost desperate need to have their existing self-views validated. Your mind craves predictability. If you have spent years harboring a deeply ingrained belief that you are unworthy, incapable, or destined to struggle, your brain builds its reality around that identity. When you suddenly experience a wave of success, it creates a state of intense psychological discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. Your external reality no longer matches your internal self-map. To your conscious mind, this success is wonderful. But to your subconscious mind, this discrepancy is a terrifying threat to your identity. To resolve this tension, your brain will unconsciously orchestrate a failure to bring your reality back into alignment with your internal self-image. If you believe you are a person who always struggles financially, and you suddenly land a high-paying client, your brain will feel an unsettling pressure. It will whisper to you that you can afford to skip a few meetings, or that you do not need to prepare for the next presentation. It is actively working to push you back down to your familiar baseline of struggle, because a familiar misery feels much safer to your brain than an unfamiliar joy. This internal thermostat is what psychologist Gay Hendricks calls the upper limit problem. Your nervous system has a specific tolerance level for positive emotions, success, and abundance. Just like a thermostat in a house, your brain monitors your internal climate. If the temperature of your life gets too cold, you take action to warm it up. But if your life suddenly gets too warm, if you experience too much love, too much recognition, or too much financial ease, your internal thermostat registers this as a system anomaly. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, begins to fire. It does not distinguish between the anxiety of failure and the excitement of success. To your primitive brain, both feel like physiological arousal, and physiological arousal means danger. To cool the system down, your brain initiates a series of self-sabotaging behaviors to lower your temperature back to your tolerated zone of comfort. You might suddenly become hypercritical of your partner after a weekend of intense intimacy. You might get unexplainably sick right before a major job interview. You might lose your keys, forget a crucial password, or pick a petty argument with a colleague. You are simply trying to bring your life back down to the temperature your nervous system is programmed to tolerate. Imagine a concrete scene from your own life. It is Sunday night, and tomorrow you have a presentation that could secure you a massive promotion. You have worked toward this moment for 3 years. You know the material inside and out. Yet, as you sit on your couch, you feel a heavy, suffocating resistance. Instead of going to sleep early, you find yourself staring at your television screen, clicking next episode at midnight, then 1 in the morning, then 2. You feel a sickening sense of dread in your stomach, but you cannot seem to turn the screen off. This is your brain in the middle of a self-sabotage loop. It is actively creating a scenario where you will be tired, unprepared, and slightly off your game tomorrow. Why? Because if you give that presentation your absolute all, with a full night of sleep and perfect preparation, and you still fail to get the promotion, it means you simply were not good enough. That realization is a psychological death blow to your ego. But if you walk into that meeting sleep-deprived and groggy, your brain has successfully protected you. If you do not get the promotion, you can tell yourself it was only because you stayed up too late. You preserve the illusion of your own potential. You get to keep believing that you could have done it if only you had tried. The counterintuitive twist in all of this is that self-sabotage is not an act of self-hatred. It is actually a radical, albeit deeply misguided, act of self-love. Your brain is trying to shield you from the pain of vulnerability, the terror of the unknown, and the agonizing sting of rejection. It is treating your potential success as a dangerous cliff, and it is pulling you away from the edge to keep you safe on the rocky, barren ground below. In today's hyper-connected, fast-paced world, this ancient survival mechanism has found dangerous new mirrors. Your smartphone is a weapon of mass self-destruction, offering your brain 1,000 escape hatches the moment the cognitive load of growth becomes too heavy. When the pressure of a creative project peaks, your brain does not have to struggle to find a distraction. It simply opens a social media app and drowns its anxiety in a flood of short-term dopamine. You mistake this digital numbing for relaxation, but it is actually the modern face of the same old defense mechanism, keeping you comfortably small, safely distracted, and perpetually stuck just inches away from your own potential. The next time you feel that heavy, familiar resistance pulling at you right before a breakthrough, do not fight it with anger or self-criticism. Recognize it for what it actually is, your brain's internal thermostat screaming that you are entering new territory. Your fingers hover over the keyboard. The cursor blinks. The urge to walk away rises in your chest. But this time, instead of closing the laptop, you pause, breathe through the discomfort, and realize that the fear you are feeling is not a sign that you are about to fail, but a signal